In September 2020, President Trump issued an executive order excluding from federal contracts any diversity and inclusion training interpreted as containing divisive concepts, race or sex stereotyping, and race or sex scapegoating. Among the content considered divisive is critical race theory. In response, the African American Policy Forum, led by legal scholar Kimberlé Crenshaw, launched the #TruthBeTold campaign to expose the harm that the order poses. Reports indicate that over 300 diversity and inclusion trainings have been canceled as a result of the order, and over 120 civil rights organizations and allies signed a letter condemning the executive order. The NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, Inc., the National Urban League, and the National Fair Housing Alliance filed a federal lawsuit alleging that the executive order violates the guarantees of free speech, equal protection, and due process. So, today I want to talk to you about critical race theory, the 10 things you need to know. Hey, elite educators and purposeful parents, how are you? Welcome back to another video. Today's video is all about critical race theory. This is a series of videos that I'm doing just to help educators be more knowledgeable about critical race theory, as well as parents who want to know more about critical race theory. I am Kimberlé Deneen with Education Noir, and we provide the best tips and tools to help you level up your practice for student growth and achievement. Now let's get into the video. So these are 10 things that you need to know about critical race theory. Hopefully this will be new information for you. And I do have notes, so you'll be seeing me looking down from time to time. So number 1, the originators of critical race theory, which you'll be hearing me say CRT instead of the whole term critical race theory, include Derek Bell, who was the first tenured Black professor at Harvard Law School, Kimberlé Crenshaw, who I did a video on her, and I plan to do one on Derek Bell as well, so that I'll have at least one of the female originators and one of the male originators. And so if you want to know more about Kimberlé Crenshaw, you can refer to that video. Also, other originators are Cheryl Harris, Richard DeLago, Patricia Williams, Gloria Ladson Billings, Tara Yoso, and there are some others, but these are the ones that I was able to find in my research. Critical race theory, this is number 2. Critical race theory, it practices interrogating the role of race and racism in society, and it began as a law class, and it spread to other fields of scholarship. And when I say that, I'm talking about other areas in higher ed. All right, so number 3, critical race theory is not a diversity and inclusion training. Contrary to popular belief, it is not that. Number 4, critical race theory began in legal academia in the 1970s, and it continued to grow in the 80s and the 90s. Number 5, Gloria, I think it's Ladson, it's Ladson, Billings, is credited with introducing CRT to the field of education. And I mean higher education when I say that. All right, let's continue with number 6. CRT doesn't attribute racism to individuals or even to groups of people, but it examines the social institutions and asserts that racism is embedded in their laws, their regulations, their rules, and their procedures. So again, I said it once before that critical race theory is not something that's actually taught in the K through 12 schools. It again is more of a higher education class, either in the field of education or in the field of law. Number 7, the foundational guiding questions of CRT and the law are: how does law construct race? Number 2, how does the law protect racism and uphold racial hierarchies? Number 3, how does law reproduce race inequity? Number 4, how can the law be used to dismantle race, racism, and racial inequity? So these foundational questions, what we do in education, when we are teaching units, we generally have what's either called guiding questions or essential questions. And I actually first started this type of inquiry when I was teaching in the International Baccalaureate program. Everything we did, every unit we introduced had what we called guiding questions. And so this is similar to that, but this is for critical race theory on the higher ed level. And as you can see, these questions are really focused on law. All right, so let's continue with number 8. CRT is not, I repeat, is not blaming white people living today for what people did in the past. They are saying that white people living now have a moral responsibility to do something about racism and how it still impacts our lives today. So I think this is a really critical point, this one for number 8. And one thing about where I am currently teaching, because I am actually teaching in Washington, D.C. public schools right now. And I started teaching there during the 2019-2020 school year. And I remember that first week, generally the first week that teachers go back, like teachers who are new to a school system or teachers who were just hired with that school system, they have usually a week of training and a week to get acclimated, get your classroom together. And then that following week, the teachers who had already been teaching in that school system, they come back. So that first week, I remember sitting through like a panel discussion about antiracism. And on the panel, they had a diverse panel. They had a white woman, a white man. They had black women, black men. They have various people on the panel. And I just thought that was pretty interesting. And then I think during 2020, the same year, they launched what they called the Antiracist University. Um, and so that was basically a series of trainings on anti-racism. And um, when they introduced it, they gave a list of reading, and one of the books was by Ibram Kendi. I hope I'm saying his name right, but he wrote the book called Stamped from the Beginning, and he also wrote a book called, I'm gonna take the glasses off because the light is just shining on my glasses. But he also wrote the book called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And so I read both of those books. I read. Also read Cast, The Origins of Our Discontent, I think is the subtitle for that. But what I wanted to say was, that book, that book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. I'm a black woman, and I got so much out of that book. I realized that I also needed to read that book, because even though I am a black woman, there were certain things that were embedded in me growing up that I didn't realize that I was being, having like bias against my own, kind, from just little things that we would say or things that we would do. One thing that he brought up in the book was called uplift suasion, where it's like, black, if you work harder, if you get more education, if you dress a certain way, then you'll be accepted. No, if a person has racial bias, they're always going to have racial bias, no matter what I do as a black woman. So that particular book was very eye-opening for me, helped me evaluate some things that I had been taught, things that were embedded in me growing up. And so, I just recommend the book for any and everybody to read. But, one thing about this particular point on number 8 is that, we all, not just white people, but we all have a responsibility to practice anti-racism. All right, so let's go on to number 9. I think that was number 8. We're on number 9. So number 9, this one is really big. The 2 largest and most prominent organizations for teachers, which are the National Education Association and the American Federation for Teachers, they both stand against the gag orders that have been adopted by many states that ban the teaching of having these courageous conversations, the teaching of history. They stand against, this whole campaign to stop critical race theory. So I think that's really important that these 2 organizations have already put out their statements that they want to support teachers being able to teach what they need to teach. And I'm going to get into more of, what these gag orders have done in the classroom, how they have limited what teachers can teach. There's this verse that says you can't heal a wound by saying it's not there. And I'm going to talk more about these gag orders in that video, but Nothing can be healed if we deny that it happened. Nothing can be healed if we stop people from talking about it. Nothing can be healed if we aren't allowed to teach, even the hard stuff that we need to teach. Nothing's going to get better. Nothing can change. So that's number 9. And number 10, the American Civil Liberties Union, known as the ACLU, is currently in litigation about and this is the first lawsuit of this kind. They are currently in litigation to challenge and block all of these gag orders that have come out against teaching critical race theory. So these are the 10 things that you need to know about critical race theory. And, I would love to hear what's happening in your state. I would love to hear what's happening in your school district. I would, if there's one that you think should have made the list, drop that in the comments as well. And definitely show some love and tap the like button. This helps the video to get to more people. And also share the video with someone that you know. And consider subscribing to our community. We're on the grow. We are at 50 subscribers. I'm excited. I do not despise small beginnings. So continue to level up your practice for student achievement and growth. And I will see you in the next video.